In this lesson, we're going over how to divide whole numbers by decimals. We've got these two examples here that we're going to have to solve. I'll go over the first one for you, then you can pause the video and try the second example on your own. Coming up on the Math Review. In order to do this successfully, we're going to have to follow 3 steps. The first step is to turn our divisor into a whole number. This means we're going to have to move the decimal point to the right as much as we need to. You'll see what I mean when we go over the first example. Step 2 is to move the decimal point in the dividend the same number of places as for the divisor. And then rewrite the question so that you don't make any errors. Because when you have a lot of work getting started, it's very easy to get confused between what your old question was and what your new question will be. So let's take a look at example 1. 32 divided by 0.05. Now, we can't do any work with the way it's written, so we're going to have to use long division notation. But before we can place the numbers where they're supposed to go, we need to know which number is the dividend and which number is the divisor. When you have it written like this first number here is the dividend. And this number here is the divisor. Now that means that the 32, since it's the dividend, is going to go inside the house of long division notation. Therefore, the divisor is going to have to go outside the house. And now that we have everything where it's supposed to be, we can start following our steps. The first thing is to turn the divisor into a whole number. Now this decimal point here has to go to the right of the number. And how many places does it have to go in order for that to happen? Well, I see 1, 2. In order for this to become just a plain old number 5, it's going to have to move 2 places. Which means, as it says in step 2, we're going to have to move the decimal point here 2 places as well. However many places you move it here is the number of places you're going to move the decimal point here. But we don't have a decimal point, do we? Actually, we do. It's always at the end of the number, so we'll write it here. We need to move 2 places, so we should annex 2 zeros. 1, 2. So we'll move this over 1, 2 places. So now we move the decimal point 2 places in our dividend, because that's going to match how many places we moved it in our divisor. Now, they're not the numbers we started with anymore. This is no longer 0.05, this is the number 5. Which is exactly what we wanted because we wanted to make it a whole number. And this is no longer 32. This is now the number 3,200. So this is our new problem. And let's rewrite that so it's a little bit neater. You'll notice that I put a lot of space in between the numbers because the most important thing is making sure that we're neat with our columns. Sometimes I even tell my students to put little lines to separate their place values, just to make sure that they don't make any mistakes when they're doing their work. So now we can just do our math. Can 5 go into 3? No. Can 5 go into 32? Yes. How many times? Well, that would be 6. Because 6 times 5 is 30. So we'll put that here and subtract that. When we do our subtraction, that's going to be 2. Next, we've got to bring down our 0 and repeat the process. How many times can 5 go into 20? Well, that would be 4 times. Because 4 times 5 is 20. I'll subtract that, and that gives me 0. But remember, we don't stop here. We have to stop at the very last digit that we have. So we'll bring down our next 0 and repeat the process. 5 goes into 0 times, because 0 times 5 is 0. When I subtract that, I get 0, and now we're finally done. Therefore, our quotient is 640. Here's example 2. Give it a shot and see how you do. Good luck. So remember, when the problem is written like this, the first value is your dividend, and the second value is your divisor. So when we're setting up our long division notation, our dividend, 55, will go inside the house, and our divisor, 0.4, will go outside the house. And remember, our goal is to turn the divisor into a whole number, and we have this decimal point here. How many place values do we have to move it to the right until it's a whole number? Well, we only have to move it one time, so our decimal point will now be here. Since we're moving our decimal point one time in our divisor, we have to move it the same number of places in our dividend. And remember, all whole numbers have a decimal point located to the right. And since I have to move this decimal point over one spot, I'll annex 1 0. And then I'll move my decimal point. So it's now going to be here. So this is no longer 0.4, this is now just 4. And then this is no longer 55, this is now 550. So let's set this up again so that we have our workplace set up all nice and neat. So again, this is now 4, and this is now 550. And also know how I left space in between, because when you're doing long division, the most important thing is making sure your work is neat. So to be extra neat, I like to drop lines to separate my place values, and then do my long division. Can 4 go into 5? Yes. How many times? 1 time, because 1 times 4 is 4. I'll subtract that, and 5 minus 4 is 1. Since I still have numbers to the right, I'll bring down the next one and repeat the process. How many times can 4 go into 15? Well, that would be 3. Because 3 times 4 is 12. I'll subtract that, and my result is going to be 3. Because 5 minus 2 is 3, and 1 minus 1 is 0. Since I still have a place value here, I'll bring this down and repeat the process. Now we have to see how many times 4 can go into 30. And how many times would that be? Well, that would be 7. Because 7 times 4 is 28. I'll subtract that. I can't do 0 minus 8, so I'll borrow from this 3, make it a 2, and make this a 10. 10 minus 8 is 2. Now we have a bit of a problem. We have something left over. When that happens, you have to make sure you place a decimal and annex a 0. And because we placed a decimal point here, we have to put it up top in our answer as well. Now we can bring down that 0 and repeat the process again. 4 goes into 20 5 times, because 5 times 4 is 20. And when I subtract that, I get 0. So therefore, my final answer is 137.5, or 137 5/10. So is it a lot of work? Yes. Is it difficult work? Not really. As long as you make sure you keep your place values lined up, you won't have any problems. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any more of our videos coming out. Thanks for watching.